Recently, news of restructuring at 343 has been making the rounds. Via Bloomberg, we've learned that Chris Lee has stepped down from the project, with Joe Staten of Bungie fame being brought in to take his place, and Pierre Heinz of the Master Chief Collection taking over multiplayer duties. As a disclaimer, nothing I say will add anything to the discussions. All I can do is wait till 343 feels confident enough to show off the game. The bad PR has given people good reason to be anxious about Halo Infinite, but given what we do know about the game, there is some positive stuff I want to talk about. For starters, we know the game is not true open world. Instead, it'll feature levels so large that in some instances they will require a rather unconventional and non-linear approach to beat. Think the second level of Combat Evolved, but blown up in size and scale. Number 2. While it's still an enhanced mobility Halo game, it seems to have been toned way down from Halo 5, retaining only sprint, slide, and clamber, with the thruster abilities and hopefully aiming down the sights being gone. Number 3. 343 seems to be putting a ton of effort into the combat rhythm of the Banished after criticisms that the Covenant in Halo 5 felt off. Enemies seem to be able to interact with one another, brutes throwing grunts, swapping out weapons on the fly and the such, as well as clearly defined colors and roles. Number 4. 343 is revisiting Halo 3's idea of capital E, equipment, being part of the external sandbox alongside weapons, grenades, vehicles, etc. Equipment seems to be a hybrid of armor abilities from Halo Reach and the Halo 3 equipment system, where some are these regenerating personal superpowers such as the grappling hook or consumable deployables like the cover shield. And number 5. While being a continuation of Halo, Halo Infinite is not the next chapter of the Reclaimer saga. This is a soft reboot for the series, a new beginning. It will, of course, bring closure to things in Halo 5, but the goal of the game's story is about looking ahead and laying down the groundwork for the next decade of Halo stories. With these things in mind, let's talk about what I personally am looking forward to in Halo Infinite. Whether it can actually pull these things off is too early to tell, but if you do find yourself enjoying the video, a like and a share is appreciated. Let's begin. One of the biggest issues I have with modern Halo is the focus on the Spartan experience instead of the Halo experience. Instead of innovating the external sandbox and play spaces, modern Halo narrowly focuses on things like Spartan abilities, with little innovation to things beyond this be the Spartan philosophy. Halo Infinite is promising a return to the more sandboxy, level-focused approach, and it was reflected in the gameplay reveal. While the game is keeping Spartan abilities like sprint, slide, and clamber, the removal of the Spartan charge, thruster packs, etc., combined with the large play spaces means that player movement is back to being somewhat limited and predictable. Part of what I find valuable in Halo is when the player's core gameplay is limited. This is because it gives both the levels and the external components of the game room to stand out and gives the developers room to breathe a bit when designing play spaces. Halo Infinite will be a bit closer to that traditional Halo design. An area of concern I do have, though, is the recharging grappling hook that could potentially lead to situations where players are too mobile and the devs don't have control over player movement when they can just randomly zip and fly around. This is the same issue Halo 5 faced, and why a lot of its levels and multiplayer maps felt samey, due to map design safeguards against the player's unpredictable enhanced mobility. Seeing as the grappling hook is an external piece of equipment though, I'm hoping this means 343 has more power about where and when the player finds it. It's entirely possible that it'll be given to us one level and then taken away in the next level, like the jetpack in Halo Reach. An interesting thing to note that I don't see a lot of people mentioning is how interactive and different the Banished units are this time. Halo 5 made very few innovations to AI encounters and sandbox design. Instead, it actually took quite a few steps back, designing combat spaces, AI behavior and their weapons and the such, more like modern shooters with a shooting gallery approach. Hide behind cover, aim down the sights at enemies far away from you until they're all dead, that way you can move on to the next area and do the same thing again. The Banished are different. Other than the well-known fact that they can fling grunts at the player, they also swap weapons out in the field and even make use of UNSC weapons. We don't know yet if they use equipment like in Halo 3, but I can only hope. Players also seem to be able to pick up things like fusion coils and throw them as makeshift bombs. And while it's cool that you can throw them, I'm more interested in what this means for their internal thought process as a studio. This meme here from a while ago highlights a lot of issues I take in modern Halo, and things like interactable fusion coils may indicate a change in design philosophy for the studio. They're thinking outside the box, beyond the player. What else will we see beyond their changes to fusion coils? Looking at the back of Halo Combat Evolved's box art shows Bungie's promise to the player. Shot down and marooned on the ancient Ringworld Halo, you begin a guerrilla war against the Covenant. This isn't just a generic marketing tagline, it's literally what happens in the game. Most engagements are initiated by the player. Hell, some of our fondest memories are the classic noise that a grunt would make when spotting the player. It's something Bungie did by design. In the past, they've noted that they like to design encounters with the sense that you're interrupting something important, or getting the jump on the Covenant. And taking a look at other open-world games, this is usually the case as well. For instance, one of the core gameplay loops of any generic Ubisoft open-world game is stumbling upon an enemy encampment, scouting out enemy positions, considering who has what, and then initiating contact. Once the proverbial dust settles and the blood is finished pooling on the ground, you step over the bodies, picking up guns, switching out grenade and equipment types, then getting in your car and then moving on to the next encounter over the hill. Another staple of open world games is exploration and rewarding the player for their curiosity. More recent open world games have a nasty habit of turning exploration into something cold, scripted, and even an inorganic back-of-the-box feature, with indications on your HUD turning the sense of discovery into something that feels very developer-curated and checklisty. However, recent games such as Avalanche's Generation Zero or even Bethesda RPGs like Fallout 4 still feature true, player-dedicated moments of discovery, stumbling upon little nooks and crannies, finding curiously positioned corpses that paint a picture about what might have happened, and finding a hidden weapon you had no clue would end up being here and wondering how many other players missed this. This kind of design is easily found in Halo as well. How many players played the Pillar of Autumn and never bothered to actually check inside of the Covenant boarding crafts and be gifted with overshield power-ups? How many made the wise choice to stray off the beaten path in Silent Cartographer and found not just guns but power-ups like Cloak? Beyond Combat Evolved, entire YouTube guides are made out of the weird stuff hidden in Halo 2, such as the legendary Scarab gun, or the hunt for skulls and secrets that accompany each new Halo release. Open world games, at their best, feel like real places due to the stuff that's hidden off the beaten path, unmarked, and truly a secret. And luckily enough, there is evidence of this sort of design in Halo Infinite. In the gameplay demo, we see the player look briefly at a downed UNSC frigate with a visible entrance to an interior space. The player is then distracted by a banished phantom and moves away, and begins making their way towards an enemy encampment after targeting it on their map. This is highly suggestive of the importance of player exploration in the game. Could you imagine what else a world like Halo could bring to this formula? My friend John, who first introduced me to Halo, spent the weekend with me last month. He's someone who dropped off the Halo train when Halo 4 released because he felt alienated by its direction, aesthetically, musically, and tonally. Halo 5 pushed him even further, to the point where he didn't even bother touching it on my Xbox because to him, Halo 5 was pursuing even more of the stuff he just didn't like. I asked him for his thoughts on the gameplay demo and braced for the jokes about the poor graphical quality. Surprisingly, those jokes never came. He said the game looked like a proper sequel to Halo 3 and like a natural evolution of the Bungie-era Halo. He asked me about the Banished and really liked the idea of an anti-Covenant force birthed from the very mistakes of the Covenant Empire. I was feeling pretty negative about Halo Infinite around that time, and hearing an outsider, somebody that I knew hated what Halo had become, interested in the series again, was energizing. Going back to that rough gameplay demo even revealed something interesting to me. The like to dislike ratio and the general discourse in the comments has balanced out into something rather positive. To me, Halo Infinite is the first Halo game since Reach, outside of Halo Wars 2, that I immediately recognize as being part of the Halo universe that I grew up with. As frustrating as it is to have new enemy types, designs, armors, and more revealed via toy lines and junk food sponsorships, I can't help but feel weirdly happy seeing what is undeniably the traditional Master Chief when scouting my local Target for new Halo figures. Graphics aside, the game seems to be welcoming and inviting to Halo fans for the first time in quite a while for the series, and that's a definite pointer towards a positive change at 343 and a desire by them to embrace Halo's whole legacy. If Halo Infinite plays its cards right, it could definitely be a fun title in the series and potentially the thing Halo needs to get itself back on track. Adapting open-world concepts into the Halo franchise isn't a bad direction to go in, and I even think that the game has a stronger sense of continuity with the brand that we all know and love. Despite that though, we can't pretend that the bad PR for the game doesn't exist, because it most certainly does. The deafening silence from 343 about what exactly is happening regarding the shakeups is only getting louder every day. But I still hope that we at least get to see something promising before the year's end. It's just, the silence is getting a little bit old. For now though, I want to pass a question on to you guys. So, the late night gaming community can't be sustained on a series that has been stagnant for so long. The Master Chief Collection's revival has been incredible, but as the wait for Halo Infinite grows longer and longer, I've been finding it more difficult to make original Halo content. We've played these games for years and years, and I don't know how much is left to be said, and I guess my question is, what are some video ideas that you want to see? What Halo series would you like to see me continue? And would you be interested in hearing my thoughts on other games? What direction should late night gaming go in? And what kind of content would you like to see? Let me know in the comments and get a discussion going. With that being said, I'll see you guys on the next video, and hopefully we'll hear something positive soon.